Hello and welcome back to Above the Noise with just Christy Wilson today. Josh is actually traveling for some client work right now, so it is just me that you're stuck with. But today I wanted to really focus on a big question I've received. We're going to be talking about, are you wasting money on marketing and how to measure ROI? Right? Because one of the biggest challenges I see when I'm coming in to a new business or onboarding a new client is I will ask some basic questions about what their current ROI is, what they're spending in marketing, what the results are. And it is alarmingly and surprisingly disturbing that the number of people that really just don't know how to measure ROI, they say, well, I spend 10 or 20% of my budget on marketing and I don't know if it's working. I guess it's working. We have patients coming through the door, or I'm getting new leads, or, we're making sales. If we can't tie a dollar amount to what we're investing, then that's of concern. We should always be able to do that. Now, sometimes the goals are not just about making a sale or the money that you're making. Sometimes it's visibility. Sometimes it's brand awareness. But all of that really should yield some type of return, right? So today we're going to talk just a little bit about how to know if we're spending our money right. Are we wasting marketing dollars? We're going to walk through a few of the most common misconceptions or myths that I hear a lot from my clients that come on, especially newer ones who have worked with maybe other agencies or freelancers, and they are told specific things like, oh, that's something you can't measure, or they're told that, it might take 6 months, and some things do take time, right? When you're talking about things like SEO, it's not going to be a miracle, 24-hour thing. You're going to see some results as you go, but in order to see the full result or full return on that investment, it does take time with some of your strategies. Some things are going to be more quick wins, and then some things are longer term strategy. I always recommend starting with a couple of quick wins that also build your pipeline towards your long-term strategy. And then I always recommend that if you don't have a large budget to start with, that you scale up, right? You start with one thing that's going to bring some quick wins so that you can take what you made from that and reinvest it, and then add on other pieces to continue to build upward and outward, right? So again, a lot of people are saying, well, I ran ads and, I don't know, I think I got a 2 times return on my ad spend. I'm hoping I'm doing social media. It must be doing something, right? So metrics are really important, and really understanding where your money's going and what it yields. That's very important in order to optimize, because every marketing strategy, regardless of what anybody tells you about, oh, this specific funnel is the one we should all be using, or experts that tell you this one method will yield X. Maybe it might be a framework that works that way, but in reality, what I've found is that each business is very different, and the same strategy doesn't always work the same way for every business, right? So let's jump into a few of the misconceptions that I've heard recently that I want to address and walk through, just so that we can get that out of the way and then move into ROI, what it is, how you measure, and some of the tips that I usually provide new clients coming on, or even just consultations that I sit in, new or potential clients with these tips in order to ensure that they walk away with some type of value. Whether they work with me, whether they work with our companies or they don't, I still want them to have that knowledge and feel empowered to take action within their business, right? So, first big misconception that I've been hearing a lot recently, and I don't know if it's coming from other agencies, if it's just this myth that people believe because they heard it somewhere or they saw it somewhere from an expert on TikTok or reels on Instagram. You have to spend big to see results. Now, I will say that when you find something that's working, right, you do want to reinvest and put more budget into that. If it's working, you want to scale it. But just throwing more money at something like ads does not necessarily mean it's going to bring you more results. Okay. It's one of the biggest lies I hear in marketing. And unfortunately, a lot of it stems from laziness, right? Or agencies just saying, well, if you just give me $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000 ad spend a month, well, I'm going to bring a result. If you throw enough money at anything, typically you're going to see some kind of result. That doesn't mean that you're maximizing your investment, right? Or that you're optimizing what you have. So it's a huge lie I hear in marketing. It's not necessarily about how much you're spending. It's more about the fact that you're spending the money on the right things, the right strategies, right? I've seen businesses that have come to me and they say I have $10,000, $20,000, $50,000 a month ad spend, and they're still struggling to bring in leads, right? I have another one that I might bring on and we start them from scratch, and maybe we only had $500, but in very targeted ads with very specific messaging, right? Solving one mini sub problem. And we booked their calendar out for weeks, right? On $500. So it's not necessarily the ad spend, because guess what? You can throw all the money in the world at an ad, but if the messaging isn't right, if it's not speaking to the right people, if it's not solving a problem they have and don't want that's of interest, that is enough to provoke action, then you're just spending more money on something that's ineffective. You might get some results by throwing money at it because you're getting a bigger reach, but it's not optimizing your spend, and you're not going to get a good return on what you've invested. So spending more on something that's not effective doesn't make any sense. You're better off to either adjust that ad messaging, adjust that ad targeting, or sometimes we find they're really not advertising on the right platform. That's not where their people hang out, right? That's not where their ideal client hangs out. It's not where their ideal customers hang out. And so we found some people, they're saying, well, I've been working on LinkedIn and I'm getting all these meetings booked. And I said, well, that's great. And they said, but I haven't closed one deal out of the 50 meetings I did this month. Well, that's a big problem, right? And we're looking at the metrics. That means that everything you spent, I mean, other than building maybe a little bit of a pipeline, some brand awareness, you really didn't get anything out of that. That's a poor return on your investment. Whereas we adjusted messaging and they were saying the first couple weeks, well, Christy, I was getting 50 booked calls on my appointment, and now I'm only getting 1 or 2 a week. And I said, right, but how many are you closing out of those 1 or 2? Well, they're closing 1 out of every 2. And so I said, okay, so you're probably bringing on 4 new clients a month as opposed to 0. And look how many hours it was taking up of your time. Your time is a valuable resource. In fact, I always say it's one of the most valuable resource. It is the most valuable resource we have, because you can't get more time. You can always have or put into play new strategies to generate more revenue. You can always get more leads. You can't get more time. And so I was telling them, you have an agency who is getting you 50 calls on your calendar. And if your sales process is really good, then there shouldn't be a problem in closing a good amount of those. But if you're getting 50, and we dug into the data and found that the reason they're not closing these deals is these are individuals that are just trying to connect and sell their products and services. They're not actually interested in learning about this person or this company's services. They're just there to sell to the company. So this agency was indeed bringing them 40 or 50 appointments every month, yet they were all the wrong people. So what happened with that? Well, we probably just blew 15, 20 hours of this sales individual's time to yield zero results. That's a lot of wasted money, not to mention the money that you paid the marketing company. But when they show you the metrics, they're telling you our stuff is working. Look how many we produced for you. That's worth it. It's only this much of a cost per meeting. Well, if the meetings aren't with your ideal customer, that's not a good investment. It's not a good return on your investment, right? Whereas we might only be providing 2 or 3 for this specific niche, right? This specific industry. We're only providing 2 or 3 good appointments a week on the calendar. It's also only taking about an hour and a half of their time each week, right? And on top of that, they're closing 1 or 2 out of each of those weeks, right? So there's a good return on the investment, and we can show not only booked leads, yes, there's less of them, but they're higher quality. So your cost per acquisition and the return on your investment is much better than what you were paying for. So again, big myth. You have to spend big to see big results. Not always the case. Now, when we do find something that's working, right, we double down or we scale up, right? And then we monitor the metrics to make sure that we continue to see a similar type of return. For example, I have an e-com store that we started out with just $1,500 a month in ad spend on Facebook. That's what their budget was. And we saw really good returns. We were consistently yielding over 5 times return on ad spend, sometimes 7 and 10 times, dependent upon how we adjusted and, depending on the week of the month. So on average for the month, we were over 6 times return on ad spend, and we never fell below 5. So that was a good investment, right? So in that case, I did recommend that we go up to $2,000 in ad spend a month, and that we adjust over the next 2 or 3 weeks, watch and make sure we're still seeing similar return on ad spend. And we did. And so we then scaled up to $2,500 a month, right? Because the more we're putting in, the more we're getting back to reinvest in. Sometimes I had one new client come on, and we set their ad spend just based on their budget at $5 a day. It's only about $150 a month in ad spend. But in that first month, now, we're not going to get 20 new clients with that, but we did get them 2 new clients with that. So they were able to then go in, reinvest, up that to $7 a day. And now we're seeing quite a bit more in outcomes and results, positive outcomes and results for new onboarded clients, plus their pipelines building. So it just depends, and it depends on the industry, right? The metrics aren't the same for everyone. An e-commerce store, a number of sales, might be totally different, wherein this other industry that it's more high ticket. And so they're only onboarding a couple per month because these are $5,000 and $10,000 a month clients. So, it depends on what the return on your investment is. If you're selling something that is, like, for example, one of my all-in-one marketing services, right? All-in-one, everything, ads, SEO, website optimization and edits. We include in any platform ads and social media management on multiple platforms, all $499 a month. It's meant for small businesses, right, that have a lower budget. We obviously aren't going to be spending, thousands and thousands of dollars to only get a couple of clients, because that would be a poor return on my investment, right? If I'm only going to bring in $500 a month from that service, and maybe my cost is $250 a month, I'm only going to make $250 a month off that. Well, then my cost per acquisition better be lower than that. Now, you do have to factor in customer lifetime value, right? But you still want that to be a low cost per acquisition, which ours is on that campaign. Same with our Google local SEO ranking, right? Getting in the top local ranking for Google. And that's great for some of my medical practices and my local service-based businesses, some HVAC, plumbers, cleaners, things like that. That, again, we have a lower cost per acquisition, but the revenue we bring in is lower on that one, right? We only charge $299 a month for the service. So we're not wanting to spend more than that to bring on clients. So we're going to talk a little bit about how to calculate ROI in just a few minutes, but I know I've really harped on this one, but I just want everyone to understand that just because you're spending a lot of money does not mean you're making the ads or the marketing more effective. It needs to be the right strategy, the right marketing. We need to find what works best, and then what other strategies work in conjunction with that, and use that strategy overall to move forward. And we double down in those areas, and maybe we remove our ad spend from other areas that don't yield as high a return, right? So next misconception that I've been hearing a lot of, especially with new clients we're onboarding, is that more leads equal more success. And we talked about this just a little bit with that other client I mentioned. But in reality, more leads doesn't mean that a company is providing you with more value. Is the example that I gave with the company wherein they were getting 40 to 50 booked appointments. So that's a good amount of leads, right? And so the agency was showing them this return on investment being awesome. And this is your cost per booked appointment. It's so low, and we're providing you with this many appointments. Well, the problem is they weren't their ideal customer. They're speaking to the wrong people, right? And so when you're targeting the wrong people, it's unlikely you're going to have a very high close rate. You're not going to onboard very many people, and you've thrown your money out anyhow, right? Leads are only as good as their quality. I would rather any day, hands down, save my time, my team's time, and only have a handful of good, high quality leads that are more likely to close than I would 100 low quality leads that we're going to waste our time on filtering through and probably not closing any additional deals, right? And yes, people will tell you, well, it's a numbers game. You just got to get the right amount of number in there and right amount of people through, and that's how you'll close. It's a numbers game. That's true. It is a numbers game, but it's a numbers game within your ideal audience, not out here bringing in 500 people who aren't interested in your services or your solutions or what you're selling is not beneficial. It's a numbers game within your ideal customer group, right? So that's the important piece. Don't let somebody fool you by saying, well, it's just a numbers game. The more leads we get you, the better it is. That's only half of the truth, right? If you're getting poor leads and people not interested in the service, you're not going to be able to close them. And that is not valuable. In fact, it is a drain on your resources because it's taking your most valuable resource, your time, right? And that's a cost. And it's wasting it. And you could have been focusing that time on getting quality leads or doing something else to benefit the business or yourself, right? Giving back more into your personal life and your family and your friends and the things, your hobbies and things that you do outside of work, right? So more leads does not equal more success. And don't let anyone tell you that. So again, I hear a lot of, well, the cost per click was only 10 cents. Well, high five, fist bump for that. How many deals did we close out of that? Oh, 0 in 3 months. Well, I don't care what the cost per click was then. I shouldn't say I don't care. I do care. It is a metric you look at and it factors in, but that is not the metric that you sell on. We sell on results. My clients care about how many sales did they make? How many clients did they onboard? How much revenue and how much profit were we able to make from this, If the answer is zero, then this is a waste of their money. And I would tell my clients, don't invest in that. It's not a good investment opportunity. The third big misconception that I've been hearing a lot of as I onboard a lot of new clients. And by the way, just gonna put this in here. So proud of our team. We had a 90% close rate this past month, right? I looked, that means 90%, 9 out of every 10 meetings myself or my team got on with or met with became clients. That's a really good rate. And you know why? Because we're targeting the right people with the right messaging, solving the right problem, right? If you can do that trifecta, you're going to have a high close rate and you're not going to waste your time. I can tell you that, and I do have sales help. So, I'm at that stage of the game, right? It depends on what stage you're at in your business. But I still jump on some of the sales calls that we have or discovery calls, a lot of times just to help people out with strategy, and it ends up that they become a client anyhow. But when I'm doing even coaching, consulting with businesses, if, for example, I probably jump on 1 or 2 a week. It doesn't sound like a lot, but I close the majority of them. So this month, I might have only jumped on 6 calls, but I closed 5 out of 6. So, it's about the quality of the lead. Back to the third misconception. Sorry. People coming on. We had a lot of people that we've onboarded in the last 6 weeks. A big amount of people coming on. I don't know if it's the end of the year. They're prepping for 2025. But we had a lot of people coming on and they're just sick and tired of their marketing efforts going to waste, their dollars being spent on high retainers that is just unnecessary, right? With other agencies or freelancers, and they feel they're not yielding results. They're telling them this is what we got you, but it's all vanity metrics. And those are helpful in pointing you in the right direction of how to optimize your funnel and how to optimize your marketing efforts and that make that dollar work harder for you. But they are not the end result that you should be measuring the success of that marketing campaign on. Okay, so other misconception I hear. Marketing is just too complicated to measure. We can't put it in a number for you because brand awareness is invaluable. That is true to an extent. However, this one really gets me. This one really gets me when people are told this because yes, there's a lot of data out there, but you don't need to be some kind of high-tech wizard to figure it out. I'm not. I might own an IT company, but I'm not your IT support, right? So it's really as simple as understanding how much did I spend and how much did I make back? If you can calculate that and break it down, and even better, use the data to break it down by campaign to see what's most effective to double down over there or reallocate your spend over there, then you're going to be ahead of the majority of your competition, at least from what I've seen with people coming on. So how do we measure marketing ROI, right? That's a big one. Well, how do I measure ROI? So ROI stands for, you probably know, your return on investment. It measures how much money you make compared to how much you spent to get that, right? And your formula is typically going to be your ROI is equal to your revenue minus cost divided by cost times 100, right? So I know that sounds like a lot, but it's actually a really simple formula. If you spend $1,000 on your ads and you make $3,000 and you plug that into that formula, your ROI is 200%, right? So that's a really simple way of doing it. A big thing that people miss in this piece is tracking your costs. Make sure you add up everything you spend on a campaign, okay? This is not just your ad spend. A lot of agencies will come back and say, well, great news, we got a 7 times ROA because, you put this $100 in and we got this $700 out or whatever it is. You also need to understand what's your cost for any tools or software, CRMs. That all has to factor in as a percent based on how much volume you're doing. And also, what about any team members' time, your time, freelancers' time, agency time? That all has to divide out and factor in across all those campaigns based on all the revenue and all the spend. Okay, so make sure you're tracking all your costs, not just your ad spend if you're using ads. You want to have a way to track how customers are finding you, right? So that you know where to reallocate your funds to get the biggest bang for your buck. So, are they coming in through Google? You can look at Google Analytics in there. A lot of CRMs will tell you what funnel they came through, right? When I build something out or my team builds something out in, maybe it's Go High Level we use for some of our stuff, we could see which funnel the customers came in through or the booked appointments came in through and exactly what ad to attribute that to. Or, again, Google Analytics is going to tell me. I have a lot of clients that we do Google local ranking, and we can see exactly how many calls came in through clicking on that local business profile, right? So we have a number around it, and I can show them this is where you were and this is where you are at now. And here's the cost you spent on me and this. And so that breaks down to X dollars per acquisition, or how many calls, how many dollars per call. But really we want the right people again, because even if we get 100 new calls, if you can't convert any of them to new patients at your medical practice, it doesn't really matter, does it? No, it's still a waste of money, not a good investment. So you want to track how they're coming in. You want to track based on specific campaigns to see. You always want to be doing A/B testing. You always want to test a couple options. This messaging versus this messaging. This aesthetics versus this aesthetics. This target versus that target, right? To optimize and then adjust as you go. And then you want to focus on, there's a lot of metrics that I use, a lot of data that goes into determining how effective a marketing campaign is. But I'm going to keep it super simple right here, right? Your key metrics to focus on, right? If I were doing it all over again and I were teaching myself as a small business what to look at and what other data to right now ignore, the big thing to focus on, what is your cost per lead? Meaning, how much are you paying to get someone interested, right? Your lead generation piece. Second is going to be your conversion rate. That's super important. Don't let an agency tell you your cost per lead only, or your cost per click, or your click-through rate, or it's all good information to utilize to improve the campaign. And it kind of tells you which piece of the campaign might be broken or might have an opportunity for optimization, but it should not be the outcome that you're measuring your ROI on. Conversion rate is important. What percentage of those leads that you brought in became paying customers, right? And then, of course, you also want to be able to calculate and factor in your customer lifetime value, right? Sometimes it's known as CLV. You want to be able to understand how much does a customer spend with you over time. This is especially important if you have subscription-based products. If you have subscription-based solutions like me, customer lifetime value is important in our marketing agency, as is in our IT company, right? Very important to understand what the average customer lifetime value is in order to understand and really have a good hold on how much I want to be paying on my cost per lead and then my conversion rate, right? How much for my cost per acquisition to acquire a new client? What does that cost? And in order to understand if it's worthwhile, I need to evaluate that against the customer lifetime value, right? You can use simple tools. You don't need anything super high tech or crazy. There are things out there to make it easier, but you can use Google Analytics. I use that for a lot of our clients to see where the traffic and the leads are coming from. You can use some of the built-in metrics in social media. Meta has some good stuff, cost per clicks and conversions. Make sure you're looking at the results though, not just your cost per click. The reason you look at those other metrics is to optimize the campaign or see where it could improve or where it's failing or where there's a hole, right? Because you want to plug the holes. Okay, so those kind of help to tell you which part of your funnel process isn't as optimized as it should, what is not as effective. Okay. And then a lot of times you can have CRM software. If you use that, some people I have, they're startups, it's their first year and they're using, Excel sheets, and that's fine. You'll get there, but you'll get to a stage where you want a CRM. And from there, that's going to be able to track your leads, sales, and sources all in one place and probably have some nice dashboards and do a lot of the work for you, right? You can build some reports in there. And the other thing to remember that I'm going to leave you with is to start small and test. Okay. Everything is not going to work the same for everyone. I don't care what any expert out there tells you. It is not going to work for every single business. You need to find what works for your business. So run a small campaign, right? With very clear goals. I want to generate 20 calls from this. I want to generate 5 new customers from this. Calculate the ROI for that one campaign to see what's working and what's not, and then adjust and scale. If something's working, say it's your Facebook ads, you're bringing in $10 for every dollar spent, high five, fist bump, invest more. That's when your ad spend should increase. That's when the agency should recommend, hey, you're getting a 10 times return on your ad spend. I would recommend you put another $500 a month into this, or another, $10 a day, or whatever it might be. I suggest you go from $50 a day to $75 a day, whatever it might be, wherever your starting point is. Some people are starting at $5 a day, and that's okay. But when you find something that's working, now you're going to go back and say, well, maybe we want to do $7 a day. And that's working really, really well, and we're seeing a great return, so we want to go to $10 a day. Scale up as you see it's working and adjust. Don't just throw everything and hope. Hope isn't going to work, okay? And then if something doesn't work, give it a fair shot. I always tell people with most marketing campaigns, you really need 60 to 90 days to evaluate how effective it is. Sometimes you can tell ahead of time, right? You can see it's trending upward or it's really not working at all. But I always tell people, adjust, but keep running that campaign for 60 days minimum to see what is working, what's not working. And if it's not working, cut it, change it, go to another platform, go to another process, go to another framework, go to another strategy. Don't be stuck on something because an expert or an agency says, well, this is the way that this type of industry works. It's not always true for every business. Every business is unique, okay? You want it to be. You want to be different from everybody else. And so really the key takeaway, if I were to leave you with anything, is that if you're spending your hard-earned money or your money that you're putting into this on marketing, you should absolutely know how much money it's bringing back. Keep it super simple, right? Track what you spend, track what you earn, and adjust it as you go. That's the key takeaway, is just to be aware of it, even if you're not a marketer. And I hear this all the time. Well, I'm not marketing. Well, I don't do marketing, so I wouldn't know. But you should know your basic numbers, and you should know what you're spending versus what you're getting out result-wise. And you should be evaluating to really ensure that it is a good return on your investment. I will leave you with that. So until next time, I hope you found value in this. I hope you found it helpful. And of course, if you have any questions, I'm always happy to answer questions. I never charge anything for helping people out and answering questions. So if you have a question, feel free to reach out. You can find me on any platform, the Profitability Pathmaker, and you can even go to our website, nextlevelconnected.com, and submit an email, a request, whatever, and or book a discovery call. And I'm happy to sit down with a free session, leave your wallet at home, and we'll talk through what you're doing, what's working, what's not working, and see if we can plug some holes and adjust your marketing to make your dollar work for you. Until next time, keep pushing forward and keep watching those numbers. Track your data, track your numbers.